Welcome to the Primordial Cultivation Chronicles. The system prompt flashed before my eyes, asking me to select my gender. I chose male and entered the naming Huaishu. Next came the simulation phase. In simpler terms, it was time to design my character's face. I took this part very seriously. In a brand new game like this, wealthy players cared deeply about aesthetics. I spent a long time molding my features, making myself look as handsome as humanly possible. I was gambling on this account. If I rolled a top-tier spiritual root with a face this good, the account's value would be astronomical. I clicked confirm, but something felt different today. A notification chimed, telling me I had to bind my identity information for anti-addiction purposes. I froze. The system had updated again. Usually, we could roll for a good spiritual root before binding our ID. This was clearly a move to stop professional studios from mass-producing accounts. It didn't matter much to me, though. I could always unbind it later. I finished the registration and waited. The system voice popped up again, asking me to choose the world difficulty. The options ranged from easy to nightmare. I didn't hesitate. I picked primordial. All the rich whales played on primordial mode. It was the only way to truly experience the gap between the haves and the have-nots. I never doubted the game's ability to drain a bank account. A warning appeared. Primordial mode offered better opportunities, but once the 10 initial resurrection pills were used up, death meant a permanent character wipe. All data would be gone. I didn't even read the terms and conditions. I just clicked agree and confirm as fast as I could. I was in a rush to gamble on my luck. Suddenly, a familiar pulling sensation dragged me through space. Young master, wake up. I opened my eyes to a familiar scene. I was wearing the standard commoner starter gear. A woman's voice reached my ears. It was Yi Ningshuang, the main heroine of the primordial world and the guide for all early-stage players. Young master, you scared me to death, she said, her face full of concern. What happened to you just now? I didn't answer. I was busy rolling my eyes, trying to find the skip button in the top left corner of my vision. My head felt a little foggy. I was genuinely confused. Where was the skip button for this dialogue? Was this some kind of bug? I made a mental note to flame the developers on the forums later. Then, things got even weirder. This NPC seemed way too intelligent. She was reacting to me in real time. Young master, are you alright? I didn't have time to waste on an NPC. I stood up and headed for the door, moving in a series of strange, jerky jumps, the fastest way to travel in-game. Yi Ningshuang stared at me, her mouth hanging open. The young master seems to be a fool, she whispered to herself. I frowned as I hopped along. Something felt off. Even though this was a full immersion simulation game, everything felt a bit too real today. My body actually felt tired. I ignored the sensation and hopped over to a stone table in the courtyard where several weapons were laid out. I didn't think twice. I grabbed the longsword. A sword was the only way to roll for a sword's spiritual root, and those were worth a fortune. I rushed out of the gate. My first quest was to help Yi Ningshuang deal with an upcoming crisis. Technically, I didn't even need to accept the quest. I could just kill the enemies first and come back for the reward later. Efficiency was everything. Meanwhile, in a dilapidated temple in Peace Town, a 2-meter-tall giant of a man sat on the ground. He was covered in wounds and surrounded by his lackeys. He looked furious as he pulled out a small box. This thing was a curse. He was just a bandit leader, but ever since he'd scavenged this box from a corpse, he'd been hunted relentlessly. He knew it had to be valuable, but he couldn't open the damn thing. With more pursuers closing in, he decided he couldn't keep it anymore. We rest tonight and leave tomorrow morning, the leader growled. He placed the box under a crumbling statue, making sure it was clearly visible. He wanted someone else to take the heat. By the way, I heard there's a girl in town named Yi Ningshuang. She's a beauty. Bring her to me. I need to relax tonight. His men grinned. Right away, boss. We'll bring her back for you. But before the lackey could move, screams echoed from outside. What's going on? The leader barked. A bandit stumbled in, a deep gash across his back. Boss, run. A villager from Peace Town is outside. He's gone mad. He's killing everyone. A villager? Are you joking? The lackey didn't answer. He collapsed and died right there. The leader ran outside and saw a bizarre sight. A young man was wielding a long sword. using nothing but basic slashes and stabs to butcher his men like he was chopping vegetables. His movement was strange. It didn't look like any known martial arts style, yet it was incredibly effective. I was just as confused as he was. Where were the health bars? And was this really primordial difficulty? These mobs were incredibly squishy. They died in one hit. I checked the map in the corner of my vision. It was definitely primordial mode. Maybe it was a bug? Or maybe the developers had lowered the difficulty for the new patch. I didn't care. I kept chaining my attacks, clearing out the bandits in seconds. Soon, only the boss remained. The bandit leader stood there in a daze. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone who clearly didn't know real martial arts could kill so fast. "Kid, you're looking for death," he roared, charging at me with a massive horse-chopping saber. The fight was a joke. I dodged every single one of his swings with simple dashes, jumps, and rolls. It was unpolished, but my timing was perfect. Every time I moved, I landed a few hits with my sword. It didn't do much damage, but it clearly hurt. He couldn't even touch the hem of my clothes. I spent 2 minutes slowly chipping away at his health until he finally collapsed. He died with his eyes wide open, staring in disbelief. But I didn't give him a second thought. I sprinted into the temple, grabbed the small box, and flipped it open instantly. Inside was a creation pill, a spirit priming pill. This was the essential item every new player needed. Only by consuming this could I finally awaken my spiritual root. I stared at the spirit priming pill in my hand. This was it. This tiny pill was my ticket to the path of cultivation. It was also the key to making this account worth a fortune. Without hesitating, I popped it into my mouth. I blinked in surprise. This game, Primordial Cultivation, was famous for its hyper-realistic simulation, but that usually only applied to food. The developers programmed flavors based on real-world data to trigger your taste buds. Pills, however, were usually tasteless. But this one, it was thick and sweet. It was so sugary, I practically craved a glass of water to wash it down. I wondered if the devs had snuck in a new patch. I shook the thought away. It didn't matter. What mattered was my stats. I pulled up my character panel and held my breath. The spiritual root section was flashing wildly. It was rolling the dice on my talent. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The color shifted. It turned purple. I started jumping up and down like a lunatic. Purple. I didn't care what specific root it was yet. Purple meant top tier. It meant I was rich. Then, the text finally locked in. My heart nearly stopped. Dao Sword's spiritual root. Status, hidden. Quality, purple chi from the east. Innate attribute, ice. Mutation, weapon. I was shaking. This wasn't just a good start. This was a god-tier opening. In this game, any sword root made an account valuable. A basic sword root account started at $1 million easily. But a Dao Sword root? That was legendary. I remembered reading about it on the official forums. It allowed you to heal yourself every time you dealt damage with a sword. It also added true damage based on a percentage of both your health and the enemy's health. It was a nuke. It was a self-sustaining tank. It was basically an official cheat code. To top it off, I had the ice mutation. Rich players obsessed over ice, thunder, and fire elements because the special effects were flashy and the damage was insane. I'd heard of a whale offering $3 million just for a Dao Sword account. And now, I had one. I was going to be rich. I could pay off my debts. I could buy a house, a car, everything. "Young master, are you all right?" I barely heard Yining Shuang's voice. I was too distracted by the system notifications chiming in my ear. Threat to Yining Shuang resolved. Received special blessing. Experience plus 1,500. Spirit liquid plus 10. I froze. Spirit liquid? You weren't supposed to get that until you joined a sect. This account was becoming so broken I almost didn't want to sell it. But then I remembered my bank balance. No. Sell it. Log out. Go to sleep. I reached for the menu to exit the game. I paused. I looked again. I searched every corner of my vision for the quit button. It wasn't there. Wait, where is it? I muttered. I searched 10 more times. My stomach dropped. The button was gone. "Young master," Yining Shuang said, her voice trembling. "I know a good doctor. Maybe we should go see him." I turned to her, my mind racing. Without thinking, I reached out and pinched her cheek. "Young master, you." Her face turned bright red, and she pushed my hand away. My world shattered. How was this possible? NPCs weren't supposed to have body heat. They weren't supposed to have real-time, emotional interactions like this. The developers had simplified NPCs months ago to stop players from messing with them. But she felt real. She felt human. I bolted out of the temple. I grabbed the leader's heavy saber from the ground and slashed it across my own arm. A sharp, searing pain exploded through my nerves. Red, warm blood began to leak from the wound. No, I whispered, sinking to the ground. No way. My eyes went hollow. I couldn't hear Yi Ningshuang's frantic questions anymore. In the distance, I saw torches approaching. It was the local authorities coming to collect the bodies. I started to laugh. It was a cold, broken sound. I'd played this game since launch, and this never happened. There were no guards who came to clean up. This wasn't a game. This was a real world. The exhaustion of pulling an all-nighter finally hit me like a physical weight. My vision blurred, and I collapsed into a deep, dark sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I bolted upright. I looked around the room. It was a simple, ancient-style peasant house. Despair washed over me. The game had a forced 12-hour logout limit to prevent addiction. If I was still here, it meant the system wasn't working. I stood up and tried to jump, habit making me check for game physics. Then I slapped myself across the face. I needed to act normal until I figured this out. I walked out into the courtyard, hoping to see another player. Anyone. I saw the sunrise. I saw the quiet peace of Ping'an town. It was beautiful, and I hated it. I opened my system panel again. My hands were shaking so hard I had to rub my face to stay calm. World chat? Gone. Party interface? Gone. Customer support? Gone. Everything that felt off last night finally made sense. I was stuck, and to make matters worse, I had chosen primordial difficulty, the highest, most brutal setting possible. I honestly didn't know if I wanted to keep living. Yi Ningshuang watched me from the doorway. She told me later how scared she had been when the bandits tried to take her. She had heard I ran toward their hideout and went to the authorities for help before following me. She never expected that the man she saved would be a master martial artist who could wipe out an entire camp alone. She thought I was a hero. She thought I had risked my life to repay her for saving me. She didn't care that the bandits were dead. They were evil men with bounties on their heads. To her, I was a savior. To me, I was a man trapped in a beautiful, deadly nightmare. Yi Ningshuang decided those bandits deserved to die anyway. Because I had saved her, she insisted I stay at her house. She called me her lucky star. Early the next morning, she headed straight to the magistrate's office to claim the bounty on the bandits I'd killed. Since she was the one who brought in a hero who wiped out a whole camp of criminals, the officials even gave her a cut of the reward. But she was worried about me. She thought my brain had snapped. With the new money in her pocket, she went and found the most famous doctor in town. When she got back home, she found me sitting on the roof, staring blankly at the sky. My eyes were hollow. I looked like I had completely lost my mind. Yi Ningshuang looked at me with pity. She thought I was handsome, almost too handsome for a man, but definitely broken. "Doctor, that's him," she whispered. "Look at him. Is there any hope?" The old doctor looked up at me and sighed. "He does look pretty far gone. Get me a ladder. I need to get up there." They dragged over a bamboo ladder. The old man climbed up, medicine bag over his shoulder, and grabbed my wrist to check my pulse. I didn't even react. I was too busy drowning in my own thoughts to care about an old man touching my arm. After a moment, the doctor climbed back down. "How is he?" Yi Ningshuang asked quickly. The doctor shook his head. "Physically, he's fine. He's just suffered a massive psychological blow. He can't accept reality. Give him time to process it, and he'll come around." Yi Ningshuang sighed in relief. "That's good. But he has another problem. He keeps jumping when he walks. It's weird." The doctor waved it off. "That's nothing. He was clearly a high-level martial artist. His body remembers how to use light work techniques to glide, but his mind has forgotten the moves. He's just trying to fly by instinct." Yi Ningshuang believed every word. It made sense. I had killed all those bandits alone, after all. She paid the doctor and saw him out. Then, she looked up at me again. "Young master, are you hungry?" she called out. I didn't answer. I was still questioning my existence, lost in a fog of regret and confusion. She shook her head helplessly. She pulled out 500 taels and silver notes and placed them on the table, weighing them down with a heavy stone. "This is the bounty money from the government," she said. "I'm leaving it right here. If you get hungry, go buy something to eat. You're a rich man now." She grabbed her basket and headed toward the mountains to pick herbs. The word money finally snapped me out of my trance. By the time I focused, she was already gone. I took a deep breath and pulled myself together. I was still alive. That was the main thing. It was just the primordial difficulty setting. So what? I was a top-tier professional player. I could handle this. I forced my panic down and started counting my cards. If I was really trapped in this world, I needed to know what I was working with. First, the system was still there. My primordial sword root was hidden, but it was real. That was my foundation for becoming powerful. Second, the core game mechanics were active. Equipment, techniques, and the talent system were all there. The problem was that this world didn't work like a normal RPG. You didn't just kill mobs to level up. You had to use cultivation manuals to push your limits and increase your stats. I had 1,500 experience points, but without a manual to dump them into, they were useless. Then there was the inventory. This was my best asset. It was basically a built-in storage ring that let me carry anything. The map worked too. I could see the layout of Pingan Town clearly, even if the rest of the world was covered in fog of war. But the biggest surprise was the potion system. I had 20 blood pills and 20 chi pills in my starter kit. In the game, I had them set to auto-use when my health hit 30%. I immediately changed that to 70%. There was no cooldown. As long as I had pills, I was basically immortal. Finally, I had 10 resurrection pills. My extra lives. The system said they'd trigger automatically upon death, but I wasn't about to test that. One mistake, and it was game over for real. I stood up. I needed to eat. I found a small noodle stall in town and sat down. It was a 100-year-old shop, and the smell was incredible. This wasn't a digital simulation anymore. The broth was made from real bones. The vegetables were fresh. I finished the first bowl in seconds. "Boss, 2 more bowls." The owner grinned at me. "Coming right up, little hero." They called me Little Hero because word had spread about the bandits. These people loved their peace, and I was the one who had secured it. They treated me like one of their own. It felt strange. I knew every NPC face in this town from the game, but now they weren't just lines of code. They were breathing. They were real. I couldn't shake this lingering sense of absurdity. Everything felt too real, yet I knew it shouldn't be. Then there was the hunger. I had no idea why I was eating so much. It felt like my body was a hollow pit, desperately trying to fill a massive void. It didn't make sense. I'd looked in the mirror. I knew this face. This body, this face, even the parts hidden by my clothes, were exactly what I had designed in the character creator. I hadn't given this character a tragic backstory or hidden martial arts training. I was supposed to be a blank slate. Yet, here I was, feeling physically drained and starving. There was also the matter of my name. Usually, after awakening a spirit root, you get to choose a nickname. My system just defaulted to Inhuai Su. It was surprisingly official, too. Apparently, the local government had a file on me. It said I was an orphan who had fled from Jingshui City. I wasn't sure if the system had rewritten reality or if a person named Inhuai Su actually existed in this world before I arrived. Honestly, it didn't matter. A legal identity was a gift. I finished 3 more massive bowls of noodles and stood up to pay. When I handed the owner a 100-tael silver bill, he looked like he wanted to cry. "Little hero, I can't break this," he said, holding the note with trembling hands. "It's too much." I scratched my head. "What should I do then?" "There's a money changer at the east end of town," he suggested. "Swap it for some loose silver or copper coins." I nodded. "Fine. Keep the bill for now as collateral. I'll be back." The owner froze, then let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "You're a remarkably honest kid, aren't you?" I headed to the money changer. After breaking the bill, I realized how skewed the economy was. 1 tael of silver was worth 1,000 copper coins. I had just eaten 12 bowls of noodles, and it only cost me 24 coins. I still had over 400 taels left. At this rate, I'd never run out of money. But I knew the truth. Silver was useless for what came next. In a month, the immortals would descend to test everyone's spirit roots. Even though my Dao sword root was hidden, the test would only show me as having a low-grade root. It was a hard-coded game mechanic, a classic pay-to-win trap. In the game, no matter what you rolled, the initial test always called you trash to force you to spend money on upgrades. I felt a pang of envy thinking about Yi Ning Xuan. She was one of the protagonists of the Hongming cultivation story. She had a hidden heavenly spirit root, and because she had main character armor, she didn't need to pay a cent. Her power would just skyrocket as she followed the plot. I looked at my status screen and sighed. Would I have to pay to upgrade my root eventually? The problem was, the game shop was gone. I couldn't spend money even if I wanted to. I was worried about my future, but worrying wouldn't fix anything. I had to take it one step at a time. My first goal was simple: get into the Xinxiao Sword sect. To do that, I needed to see what other game functions still worked. I knew Ping'an Town like the back of my hand. I went to several spots that used to hold hidden quests or items. Nothing. The items that existed in the digital version weren't there. I checked the old willow tree in the center of town. In the game, touching it cleared the fog of war. Now, it was just a tree. I checked the town's entrance for the teleportation stone. The stone was there, but the magic was gone. It was just a rock. Fear started to creep in. There were too many unknowns, and this world was set to Hongming difficulty, the hardest setting possible. The only thing that worked was the map. It cleared the fog as I walked. Suddenly, a notification pinged in my head. Ping'an Town map explored. Reward, 100 experience. I felt a rush of relief. Okay, the system was still alive. Then, something even better happened. I saw a blue exclamation mark on my map. A quest. It was only a side quest, but I didn't care. Quests meant experience points. I sprinted toward the icon and found a familiar face. The doctor who had treated me that morning, Old Manly. He looked miserable, staring at a tattered piece of paper. Need some help? I asked, appearing out of nowhere. He jumped, clutching his chest, but calmed down when he saw it was me. He knew I was the one who had handled the bandits. He sighed, looking back at his paper. I've been trying to complete this ancient pill recipe for years. I finally have the ingredients, but I'm missing one: blaze grass. I've never even heard of it, let alone seen what it looks like. Asterisk ding. Quest triggered. Help Dr. Lee find blaze grass. Accept. Asterisk. I'll find it for you, I said immediately. As soon as I accepted, the pathfinding feature kicked in. A small icon appeared on my mini-map. I almost laughed when I saw where it was pointing. The legendary blaze grass was growing right on Dr. Lee's roof. I leaped up, grabbed a weed with small nodules on the stem, and jumped back down. Here, blaze grass. Dr. Lee looked at the weed, then at his roof, then back at me. Are you sure? It was right there. Trust me, I smiled. I just have a knack for these things. He nodded and hurried inside. 10 minutes later, a loud pop echoed from the house, followed by a thick cloud of black smoke. He stumbled out, coughing and waving his hands, but he was grinning. He pressed a handful of warm pills into my hand. Asterisk ding. Quest complete. Reward, 300 experience. 10 bone-strengthening pills. Asterisk. I stared at the pills in shock. Side quests and daily tasks were still active. This meant I could keep leveling up. For a player, daily tasks were the ultimate lifeline in the early game. But what really confused me was Dr. Lee. In the game, players joked that this guy was a hidden god because he sold high-level pills in a starter town and appeared in every major city under different aliases. I never realized that, in this reality, I was the one who helped him start his business. It was a strange feeling, being part of the history I used to just play through. But there was a bigger issue. These were bone-strengthening pills. You weren't supposed to get these until you joined a sect. They were the key to the first stage of cultivation. Do you know what these are? Dr. Lee asked, seeing me stare. I looked at him, my expression turning serious. Did you really just make these yourself? He nodded, but seeing the look on my face, he started to look nervous. He knew I was a hero, but right now, I probably looked a lot more dangerous than he expected. To Dr. Lee, I was an enigma. He saw me as a powerful martial artist with a mysterious background, someone who didn't blink at the thought of killing. After all, I had found the silver glow grass when he couldn't. I was a man of the world in his eyes. Can I see the recipe? I asked. He didn't hesitate. He handed it right over. The moment my fingers touched the paper, a familiar notification chimed in my head. Asterisk ding. Bone-strengthening pill recipe discovered. Would you like to learn? Asterisk. I froze. It actually worked. I quickly confirmed the prompt mentally. Knowledge flooded my brain, settling deep into my memory. I looked down at the paper. The physical recipe hadn't vanished. A grin tugged at my lips. The system features were still fully functional. This was perfect. I kept my face neutral, though, and looked at Dr. Lee with a serious expression. Don't ever refine these again, I warned him. Even if you do, don't let a soul know. If you do, it will be your death sentence. I wasn't exaggerating. This wasn't a game anymore. A commoner possessing pills that cultivators craved was a recipe for disaster. Dr. Lee didn't doubt me for a second. I understand, he said, his face pale. Thank you for the warning. He decided right then that if he ever made them again, he'd keep them hidden from everyone, except me. I started thinking back to the game. During the early pioneer days in Peacetown, players relied on Dr. Lee for health and mana potions. He was the legendary #1 merchant of the game, appearing even at the entrances of high-level endgame dungeons. I had over 400 taels of silver on me and wanted to stock up. Do you have any other pills? I asked. He shook his head. No, just those. I was stunned. Really? None. I wouldn't lie to you, he said earnestly. I pulled out a red health potion and a blue mana potion I had in my inventory. You really don't have anything like these? He leaned in, studying them closely. I've never seen these before, but I think I could make them. He looked up at me, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Could you let me study these? I feel like I can figure out the formula. I stared at him, speechless. So that was it. The reason he became the world's greatest potion merchant in the game's history was because of me? It felt surreal, like a weird loop of logic that actually made sense. Fine, I said, handing them over. Study them. He took them like they were holy relics. I can sell these, right? Sure, I nodded. He bolted back into his house to start his research. With nothing else to do, I decided to wander around Peacetown. Back when I played the game, I was always grinding materials or leading raids. I never actually looked at the world. Now that I was living in it, I wanted to see it all. The real Peacetown was far more vibrant than the digital version. It felt alive. Even though it was an ancient setting, the food was incredible. Since this was a cultivation world, even the ingredients held a trace of spiritual energy. I walked the streets like a starving ghost, eating everything in sight, from street snacks to candied haws. The local vendors loved me. They figured anyone who enjoyed food that much couldn't be a bad person. By evening, I was lugging a mountain of supplies back to Yining Shuang's house. She wasn't home yet. As I sat alone in the courtyard, the excitement of the day faded. A heavy wave of loneliness hit me. I was in a foreign world with no family and no friends. I sat on the doorstep, staring into the distance for a long time. Finally, Yining Shuang returned. She saw the piles of meat, spices, and supplies on the stone table and gasped. My goodness, why did you buy so much? Are we trying to go broke in one day? She was complaining, but she couldn't hide her curiosity. She started poking through the bags. When she saw the expensive meats and seasonings, she opened her mouth to lecture me, but then she stopped. She remembered what Dr. Lee had told her when she went to sell herbs earlier. Ning Shuang, he had said, that young man probably comes from a wealthy family. He's a martial artist. He has high standards for food. Just cook what he brings and don't ask questions. She sighed and kept digging through the bags. When she found a large sack of white rice, her face flushed. Her family was desperately poor, yet I had thought of everything. For a moment, she understood why people were so eager to serve young masters from big families. This kind of life was something anyone would envy. I saw her starting to prep the kitchen and stood up to help. No, she insisted, pushing me away. I can handle it. A gentleman should stay away from the kitchen. I know the rules. I wanted to tell her I didn't care about those old traditions, but her gaze was so firm I just gave up. I sat back down, bored, waiting for dinner. My mind drifted to the future. I knew the main plot of the game, but I didn't know if it would play out the same way here. If it did, I had to be very careful about my relationship with Yining Shuang. In the game, she was the great empress who eventually conquered the 8 desolations and wiped out the demon nests. Her ending was legendary, but her journey there was absolute hell. As a player, You were basically a glorified cameraman, watching her suffer through tragedy after tragedy. The worst part was the betrayal by the game developers. All the male players thought they were building a romance with her, only for the devs to pair her up with a pure young sword immortal at the end. It had caused a massive civil war in the community. I remembered feeling like I'd been cheated on back then. But this was real life now. Would she still end up with that sword immortal? If so, I should probably just treat her as a stranger. But there was a catch. If the main story stayed the same, I had to stay by her side. The main quests were my only way to get stronger. The thought of Yining Shuang ending up with that pure yang sword immortal stayed stuck in my head. It was frustrating. I hated it. But then, a realization hit me. According to the game plot I knew so well, Yining Shuang would eventually solve every crisis on her own, whether I helped or not. If the main quests triggered, why should I stress? I could just hang around her like a glorified cameraman. I remembered a comment from another player back home. They said, "You guys don't get it. I just take a nap, wake up, and everything is solved." Isn't that peak performance? I actually started to chuckle to myself. I used to despise the observer role, but now I fully embraced it. If I followed this path, I just needed to stay on speaking terms with her. I didn't need to get deeply involved. I'd just stay close enough to trigger the quests, soak up the rewards, and stay safe. It was the perfect plan. "Dinner is ready," Yining Shuang's gentle voice called out. I hurried over to the table. As I sat down, I noticed she was just standing there, waiting. "Eat with me," I said. She shook her head quickly. "That wouldn't be right. Sit down and eat," I insisted, my tone firm. "If you don't, I'm not eating either. I'll throw the whole meal away." She waved her hands in a panic. "No, don't waste it." She sat down awkwardly, taking tiny, shy bites while stealing glances at me. I didn't hold back. I ate heartily, enjoying the food. I noticed a slight blush creeping onto her face. Since her parents passed away, she probably hadn't felt this sense of home in a long time. I was different from the other men she knew, and she seemed to feel a strange sense of comfort, even attachment, to my presence. As I ate, I decided to set some boundaries. After we finish, I'm going to find an inn to stay at. It's not good for your reputation if a lone man and woman live under the same roof. Thank you for taking care of me these past few days. She froze. Her head dropped low. But did I do something wrong? Of course not, I said. I'm just worried about what people will say about you. Then I realized something was wrong. I looked closer and saw huge tears splashing onto her lap. I panicked. Hey, don't cry. Okay, I won't go. I'll stay, all right. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. Really? I took a deep breath. What a mess. This definitely wasn't in the game scripts. I gave my word, so I'm staying. But what about your reputation? You're my benefactor, she said quickly, her words tumbling out. Everyone in Peace Town understands gratitude. If you left, it would look like I failed to treat you well. I'm not trying to force you to stay. She started rambling, getting more confused the more she tried to explain herself. I stayed silent. It was clear I wasn't moving out tonight. I kept telling myself, don't catch feelings. Do not get attached, I tried to hypnotize myself into indifference until my expression turned cold and distant. Yining Shuang went quiet. After dinner, she washed the dishes and rushed to tidy my bed. She was even more diligent than before, treating me like some high-ranking lord. She wouldn't let me lift a finger. I felt helpless. I walked out to the courtyard and looked up. The stars were brilliant, and the moon was so large it looked painted. The air was crisp and sweet with the scent of late spring flowers. Tea, young master, she said, bringing out a tray. I took a sip and blinked in surprise. It tasted like milk tea, even better, actually, though it had a slight saltiness to it. I prefer this kind of tea sweet, I noted. She gave me a bright, sweet smile. I'll go buy some sugar tomorrow. I nodded and watched the night sky for a while longer before heading to bed. Without a phone, life was boring, and I was eager to see if new daily quests would pop up tomorrow. As I drifted off, Yining Shuang quietly blew out the candle. She walked back to her room with her head down, wondering if I had grown to dislike her. The next morning, I woke up early. It was strange how my sleep schedule had fixed itself in this world. Yining Shuang was already up, having prepared a breakfast of lean meat porridge and salted duck eggs. In this era, that was a luxury. I didn't hold back and started eating. Her cooking was incredible. I looked at her as she moved around. Even in her simple clothes, her beauty was undeniable. I cursed the game developers in my head. How could they take such a perfect, gentle character and force that romance plot on her? I wondered if I could change her fate, but I quickly killed that thought. If I moved in too early and messed up the timeline, would the main quests even trigger? What if the Sword Immortal showed up anyway, and she left me? I couldn't risk the heartbreak or the loss of power. I had to stay on the sidelines. Strength and survival were my only goals. I pulled out a 100-tael banknote and set it on the table. Take this. 1. I can't have you paying for my food. 2. I'm picky about what I eat, so I'll be trouble for you. If you don't take it, I can't stay here in good conscience. I left her no room to argue. She took the money, looking overwhelmed and lost. I finished my meal and stood up. I'm going out for a walk. She nodded. After I left, she stood there for a long time, staring at the money in her hand. I pulled up the map of Peace Town and felt a wave of relief. The daily quest icons had refreshed. I followed the map toward a golden exclamation point and soon found a burly man working at a forge. Hey brother, I called out. Need a hand with anything? The blacksmith looked up, recognized me, and grinned. Ah, the little hero. Actually, I do. I need you to grab the small hammer for me, the blacksmith said. I looked at him, then at the hammer. It was sitting exactly 2 steps away from him. He could have reached out and grabbed it himself without even standing up. I wondered for a second what kind of giant eagle he thought I was, running errands like this, but I didn't complain. I was more than happy to help. A quest was a quest, even a lazy one. I handed him the hammer, and a notification flashed in my mind. I had completed my daily task. Another 300 experience points were added to my pool. It wasn't a massive haul, and unlike my interaction with Dr. Lee, there were no extra rewards or hidden bonuses this time. I didn't mind. Experience was experience. With the daily grind finished, I headed over to the Peacetown Martial Arts Hall. I spent a hefty 5 taels of silver to buy a basic manual called the Non-Blood Identification Technique. It was a mortal-grade skill, but I needed to test something. I wanted to see if the way I used experience points had changed in this reality. I opened the manual, and a prompt immediately popped up in my vision. Asterisk. Discovered mortal-grade manual. Non-blood identification. Learn. Asterisk. I didn't hesitate. Learn, I whispered. A new icon appeared in my skill bar instantly. My heart skipped a beat. This was borderline broken. If I could learn a mortal manual in a heartbeat, what would happen when I joined a sect and found high-level spells and divine abilities? Would I just click and know them? The most incredible part was the muscle memory. When I dragged the skill out of my active bar and into my backpack, the knowledge stayed, but I felt clumsy, like a toddler trying to walk. But the moment I slotted it back into the active bar, everything felt fluid. It was as if I had practiced the technique 10,000 times. There was no lag, no hesitation, and best of all, no cooldown. As long as I had the mana, I could spam it forever. In the game, high-level skills had ridiculous cooldowns that made raid encounters a nightmare. I used to dream of a no-CD hack. Now I was living it. Next, I checked the experience system. I noticed a small upward arrow on the skill icon. I focused my mind on it, and the details expanded. Asterisk, skill advancement, current level, beginner. Progress, 300/2200. Asterisk. I dumped my points into it. A golden light flashed in my mind, and the skill leveled up to small success. The 1-stage identification transformed into 2-stage identification. I let out a long breath of relief. The system worked exactly how I needed it to. But then, I noticed something strange. One of my blood-replenishing pills had automatically been consumed. Did my health capacity increase? I wondered. I didn't have a visible health or mana bar anymore, but I could feel my physical constitution strengthening. The pills weren't just for healing wounds. They were maintaining my vitality as my body evolved. There was just one downside. I was suddenly starving. I sprinted toward the local tavern. Bring me one of everything on the menu, I shouted as I burst through the doors. By now, everyone in Peacetown knew who I was. They knew I had money, and they knew I was the little hero who took down the bandits. The shopkeeper grinned and hurried to the kitchen. Right away, hero. Just a moment. I started eating like a man possessed. I didn't care if people stared. In this world, People respected a big eater. To them, a massive appetite meant powerful chi and blood. The martial artists at the local hall ate their meals by the bucketful. The more I shoved into my mouth, the more the locals looked at me with awe. Nearby, Master Zhao, the head of the martial arts hall, watched me with an envious look. He was thinking the same thing. This kid's vitality must be astronomical. I was finishing my last plate and getting ready to pay when Master Zhao stood up and approached me. He looked hesitant, almost shy. "Little hero, please, wait a moment," he said. I blinked, recognizing him from the manual purchase earlier. "Master Zhao, is something wrong?" He cleared his throat, looking nervous. "Actually, I have a favor to ask. It's a bit difficult." "Take your time," I said, giving him a friendly smile. "Tell me what's on your mind." He quickly explained the situation. The local government had sent word that a dangerous fugitive was heading toward Qinghe County, which was right next to Peace Town. The authorities were worried and wanted the local martial artists to patrol. There was a 700-tael bounty on the guy's head, but he was a stone-cold killer. Master Zhao knew his own men were no match for a guy like that, but he had seen me take out a dozen bandits single-handedly. As he spoke, a voice rang out in my head, cold and mechanical. Main quest triggered, the great opening. Prologue. Help Peacetown deal with the fugitive, the flower-plucking thief. Reward, 1,500 experience points. My mind went into a tailspin. This was wrong. Everything was wrong. In the original game, the prologue quest was supposed to trigger only after Yining Shuang was kidnapped by this thief. The player's job was to rescue the future empress and then kill the criminal. The thief was a big deal because he had stumbled upon a manual from the Heaven-Earth Harmony sect. He didn't have the spiritual roots to truly cultivate, but the techniques had turned him into a superhuman predator. In the original timeline, a young female disciple from the Divine Firmament Sword sect was supposed to be sent to kill him. She was a spoiled little junior sister with a powerful background who had spent the whole time playing around and forgot about her mission until the last second. She was supposed to arrive just as the player finished the job, leading to a cinematic where she acted all high and mighty, tested the player and Yining Shuang for spiritual roots, and recruited them into the sect. But now, the quest was being triggered by a random NPC before the kidnapping even happened. And what about the Wolf Plague quest? That was supposed to come first. It was gone. The timeline was accelerating, skipping steps, and throwing me straight into the fire way ahead of schedule. If I managed to kill this fugitive, what would happen to the Divine Firmament Sword sect? If I did their job for them, would they even show up? Manager Zhao saw me standing there in silence, lost in thought. He let out a heavy sigh, misinterpreting my hesitation. He told me he knew he was asking a lot, and if it was too much, I should just forget he mentioned it. "I'll do it," I said, snapping out of it. Zhao froze, his eyes widening in pure shock before they lit up with joy. He asked if I was serious, and I gave him a firm nod. I told him if he spotted the criminal, he should come find me immediately. He was ecstatic, shaking my hand, and telling me the whole martial arts hall would sleep better knowing I was on board. He even offered me anything I needed, but I just smiled and shook my head. He handed me a wooden token, a temporary deputy badge from the local magistrate. It would make things easier if I had to deal with the law. With that, Zhao sprinted back to the hall, desperate to share the news with his men. As soon as he was gone, I pulled up my system and clicked the quest tracker. A glowing line appeared on my mental map, stretching out toward a bright yellow dot. My heart skipped a beat. The distance was tiny. The dot was right here, in Peacetown. I felt a cold sweat break out. This was a mess. According to the game's timeline, this guy should still be miles away in Qinghe County, terrorizing people there. He wasn't supposed to flee to Peacetown until he heard the Sword Sect was hunting him. That's when he was meant to cross paths with Yining Shuang. But the line on my map was pointing straight toward Yining Shuang's house. I didn't think. I just ran. My lungs burned as I sprinted through the narrow alleys, praying to whatever gods were listening that she was okay. If anything happened to her, my entire main quest line would collapse before it even started. I reached the house and skidded to a halt. Inside, Yining Shuang was backed into a corner, her face pale with terror. Standing before her was a man so hideous he barely looked human, his face twisted into a cruel, jagged grin. The man just let out a low, guttural chuckle. He told her his name didn't matter, but he promised he was going to make her feel very good in a moment. He began to prowl toward her, closing the distance. Yi Ningxuang screamed for help, her voice cracking with desperation. The man just laughed harder. He told her not to bother. He had already used a knockout gas on all her neighbors. No one was coming. He moved slowly, savoring her fear. I knew this type of predator. He loved the struggle. He wanted to hear her cry. He even licked his lips, lost in his sick fantasy. I kicked the door off its hinges. I stepped into the room, my expression dark, my blood boiling. I asked him who the hell he thought he was, and if he was looking for a way to die. The man turned, his eyes landing on me. He paused, his gaze lingering on my face. A disturbing smirk crossed his lips. He remarked that I was surprisingly handsome, almost as pretty as a woman. He said he had just thought of something very interesting to do with both of us. Yi Ningxuang scrambled over, hiding behind my back, her voice trembling as she called out to me. I told her to get outside and wait. She protested, wanting to stay by my side, but I didn't have time for a debate. "You're in the way," I said bluntly. She bit her lip, realizing she couldn't help in a fight like this. She turned and ran, not just to hide, but to find managers Zhao and Dr. Li. She knew the neighbors needed help with the gas, and the town needed to know the murderer was here. With her gone, I let out a breath, focusing entirely on the monster in front of me. My palms were damp. In the game, I was a god of mechanics. I could clear raids with trash gear because I knew every frame of animation. But this wasn't a game. This was reality, and real bosses didn't follow a rigid script. The thief didn't even try to stop Yi Ningxuang from leaving. He was fixated on me now. He clearly didn't see me as a threat. To him, I looked like a pampered young master, too soft to be a warrior. He had a bit of chi observation skill, and while he could tell my blood vitality was stronger than a peasant's, he still thought I was easy prey. He told me he was tired of hearing women scream, and was curious to hear what sounds a man would make. He told me today was my lucky day. Is that so? I narrowed my eyes. Have you ever heard the sound of your own death rattle? He laughed, mocking my confidence. He reached for the hilt of the blade at his waist, promising to make me suffer before the fun began. But then, something happened. As his hand touched his sword, a bright red line, a trajectory path, extended from his blade directly toward me. My heart soared. The system's combat UI was still working. To a mechanical player like me, this was basically a cheat code. When the red path glowed at its brightest, I stepped to the side, moving just inches out of the way. The thief moved like a blur, appearing exactly where I had been standing a millisecond ago. He froze, his blade cutting through empty air. He couldn't understand how I had dodged. While he was reeling from the confusion, I swung my longsword at his exposed back. He was fast, though, a true professional. He felt the chill of my blade and managed to leap away, creating distance. He looked at me differently now. He realized my combat experience was freakish. He knew he couldn't play around anymore. If he took too long, his pursuers might catch up. He looked at me with a shred of regret, saying it was a shame he had to kill me so soon, but I had been uncooperative. He lunged. This time, he used a specialized movement technique, coming at me with blinding speed. He was certain I couldn't dodge this one. And he was right. I didn't plan to dodge. As he charged, a yellow circle appeared over his body in my vision, rapidly shrinking toward his center point. It was a parry prompt. I waited, my eyes locked on the shrinking ring. The moment the solid yellow circle overlapped with the dotted line, I slashed upward. Clang! The sound of steel on steel rang through the room. The force of my parry sent his sword flying out of his hand. The impact threw his entire upper body backward, leaving his throat wide open. He looked utterly bewildered, his mind unable to process how his ultimate move had been countered so perfectly. I didn't give him a second to think. I unleashed a flying snow strike. Slash! The cold steel tore through his neck. He slumped to his knees, hands clutching at the wound, but the blood was already spraying through his fingers. He tried to speak, but only wet, gurgling sounds came out. He collapsed face first onto the floor, his body giving one final, pathetic twitch before going still. I stood there, staring at the corpse in the silence of the room. I was stunned. In the game, Even with perfect play, this boss took at least 2 minutes to whittle down because of his massive health bar. But in reality, one clean hit to the throat was all it took. One mistake, and it was over. As long as you hit a vital spot, people die. I looked down at the bandit's corpse. In the game, even a common bandit required 4 or 5 solid hits to take down unless you had high-level gear. But in reality, one clean slice to the throat, and it was over. Reality, in some ways, was actually simpler than the game. I shook my head, quickly dismissing that thought. It was a dangerous way to think. In the later stages of the game, the bosses were cultivators, some were even immortals. In the game, those bosses followed fixed mechanics and predictable patterns. If you knew the scripts, you could beat an enemy 2 entire realms above you. Reality wouldn't be that kind. Those bosses would have minds of their own. They wouldn't just stand there and spam the same 3 skills. There wouldn't be a magical shield to protect me from a screen-clearing ultimate move. I sheathed my sword and let out a long, shaky breath. The tension finally began to bleed out of my muscles. Despite the danger, I felt a surge of confidence. The game's combat system was still active in my vision. As long as I had that system, I had a fighting chance. A notification pinged in my mind. Ding. Prologue Quest Act 1 complete. Slay the wanted criminal, the flower thief. Reward, 1500 EXP. Act 2 triggered. Test spiritual roots and enter the Divine Firmament Sword Sect. Reward, 500 EXP. I stared at the new objective and felt a headache coming on. The flower thief had appeared way too early. According to my memory of the game, the people from the Divine Firmament Sword Sect weren't supposed to be here yet. How was I supposed to finish Act 2 if the recruiters hadn't arrived? Was the quest line broken? How did you do that? A voice asked. I jumped and looked up. A wave of relief washed over me. She was here. Lu Qingyi, the little sister character from the Divine Firmament Sword Sect. Where's your dear? I asked instinctively. The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. I immediately wanted to slap myself. In the game, she always rode a majestic white deer. Right now, she was just standing on the roof. Lu Qingyi narrowed her eyes at me. How do you know I have a deer? Intuition. I tried a weak smile. Do you believe in that? She didn't answer. She hopped off the roof, her body drifting down slowly as if gravity were merely a suggestion. Once she landed, she looked up at me. I looked down at her. We stood there in an awkward, silent stare down. This was all wrong. The main quest was moving, but the steps were out of order. In the game, Lu Qingyi's entrance was a grand cinematic event with high-definition flair. Here, she just kind of appeared. And now we were just staring at each other. Lu Qingyi was clearly confused. She was a cultivator. She knew exactly how strong that bandit was. To her, I looked like a normal person with decent physical skills, but nowhere near the level of a seasoned criminal. Yet, I hadn't just beaten him. I had crushed him. To her, my movements probably looked contradictory. My flying snow strike was professional, but everything else about me looked like a total amateur. It was like watching someone who didn't know martial arts somehow perform them perfectly. How did you do it? She asked again. I just dodged, I said, rubbing the back of my neck. Then I swung. Then he died. She went silent for a long time. Then she looked at me with a flat expression. You're not very good at talking, are you? I didn't have a comeback for that. I just awkwardly crouched down so I was closer to her height. She pulled out a strange, translucent stone and held it out. Put your hand on this, she commanded. I knew what this was, the spiritual root test. I played along and pressed my palm to the stone. Just like in the game, no matter how much potential a player was supposed to have, the starting test always showed the same thing. The stone emitted a faint, flickering light and a slight chill. This was the sign of a low-grade spiritual root. Lu Qingyi stared at the stone for a long time, her expression unreadable. Young master, young master. Yi Ningxuang's panicked voice echoed through the yard. She came sprinting in with a crowd of villagers behind her. When she saw I was unharmed, she let out a massive sigh of relief. But then she saw Lu Qingyi and froze, her body tensing up again. The villagers were staring at the bandit's body. He's actually dead. Master Zhao, the local martial arts hall leader, whispered. He approached the corpse cautiously, checking for a pulse. When he confirmed the kill, he looked at me with newfound awe. If I could kill a criminal like that, I might be a grandmaster. Having a grandmaster in Peacetown was a huge deal, but their celebration was cut short. Asterisk swish. 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 Asterisk. Several figures descended from the sky, landing around the courtyard. The other disciples of the divine firmament sword sect had arrived. The villagers gasped and immediately dropped to their knees. "We greet the immortals," they shouted in unison. Yining Shuang knelt quickly as well. Lu Qingyi, who had been silent this whole time, finally turned her gaze away from me. She scanned the crowd until her eyes locked onto Yining Shuang. "You, come here," Lu Qingyi said coldly. Yining Shuang trembled but obeyed, walking over slowly. Lu Qingyi gestured for her to touch the stone. As soon as her fingers brushed the surface, the stone erupted in a brilliant, pale purple glow. The mysterious frost root. Low grade. Lu Qingyi didn't look surprised. I knew why. This was a hidden spiritual root. It appeared weak now, but it could be evolved into something godlike with the right treasures later on. "Are you willing to join the divine firmament sword sect?" Lu Qingyi asked. Yining Shuang was stunned. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. She instinctively looked at me, seeking permission. I nodded. Of course she had to go. The entire plot of this world revolved around her. I was just the sidekick, she was the star. Seeing my nod, Yining Shuang bowed deeply. "I am willing." Lu Qingyi handed her an outer disciple token. "Prepare yourself. We leave for the sect in 3 days." "Yes, immortal," Yining Shuang whispered. Then nothing. Lu Qingyi just stood there. I waited. My heart started to race. Wait, what about me? I thought. Even with a low-grade root, the game script said I was supposed to get in as an outer disciple too. Where was my token? I stared at Lu Qingyi. She stared back at me. The silence stretched on until it became uncomfortable. Finally, without saying a word, she reached into her robe and tossed a second token at me. I caught it, stunned. "Aren't you going to ask if I'm willing?" Lu Qingyi looked at me with a deadpan expression. "You are." "Well, yeah, I am." I looked at the token in my hand, feeling uneasy. In the game, Lu Qingyi was a classic tsundere character, hot-headed and arrogant. But this version of her? She was eerily calm. She was definitely a little girl, but something about her felt much older. The way she carried herself was different. She didn't feel like a young girl. She felt like a queen looking down on her subjects. Was the difference between the game and reality really this vast? Lu Qingyi narrowed her eyes at me. "Why do I feel like you already know me?" she asked. Her voice was cold. "And why does my current behavior seem to clash with the image you have in your head?" I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. Can she read minds? She shook her head as if answering my unspoken thought. "I cannot read minds. But you wear your thoughts on your face. You are different. You don't feel like you belong to this world." I felt like my hair was standing on end. In the game, Lu Qingyi was a handful, but she wasn't terrifying. This version of her was dangerous. I forced myself to keep a straight face and grip my sleeves. "You must be joking, senior sister. I was raised in a wealthy family and lived a sheltered life. That's probably why I seem out of place." Lu Qingyi let out a short, dry laugh. It wasn't a friendly sound. Suddenly, a disciple from the divine firmament sword sect descended from the sky, balancing perfectly on a flying sword. He glared at me with pure disdain. "You mortal," he spat. "You're lucky you met senior sister Lu. If it were any other immortal, your disrespect would have gotten you crushed like a bug." I blinked, confused. I looked at the villagers of Peacetown and realized they were all staring at me with terrified, anxious eyes. I realized then that I had been far too casual with a powerful cultivator. I truly didn't know the rules. I stammered, trying to play the part of the ignorant noble. Lu Qingyi waved her hand dismissively. "Forget it. From now on, you are a disciple of our sect. When we are out in the world, keep acting exactly as you are. It saves me the trouble of telling people how arrogant our sect members should be." I bowed deeply, trying to hide my relief. "I will follow your teachings, senior sister." She gave a curt nod. "You also have 3 days to prepare. I will return then to collect you both. Be ready." With that, she stepped onto her sword and soared into the sky. The other disciples followed her, forming a perfect V-shape as they disappeared into the clouds. As soon as they were gone, the villagers rushed over, their faces full of envy and excitement, offering their congratulations. I just wiped the sweat from my forehead. I had made it in. Later that day, in a small tavern in Peace Town, the disciples were resting. One of them looked at Lu Qingyi, who was staring out the window. Senior sister, our mission was only to recruit Yining Shuang. Why did you take that man as well? Lu Qingyi didn't look back. He has a spiritual root. One more outer disciple makes no difference to the sect. The disciple smiled. That's true. But I noticed the way Yining Shuang looks at him. It's not a good sign. She is the one our ancestor prophesied would carry the world's destiny. If she develops feelings for someone with a low-grade root, it could ruin everything. Lu Qingyi frowned. To her, the big picture was a fragile thing if it could be shattered by a simple crush. But she sighed. You have a point. Destiny is a lonely path. If she carries the fate of the world, those around her might suffer the consequences. It might be bad for Ying Huaishu. The other disciples looked at her, stunned. Usually, people would worry about the boy holding the girl back. Lu Qingyi was worried the girl would destroy the boy. Just then, a streak of light flew into the room. Lu Qingyi caught it, and it transformed into a jade slip containing my background check. She scanned it, her expression shifting from boredom to pure shock. According to the report, I was an orphan from a fallen noble family. I had joined a martial arts sect, but was told I had no talent. Yet, I had leveled up at an impossible speed. Then, I had supposedly encountered a demon, been chased off a cliff, and was rescued by Yining Shuang. Give me Yining Shuang's file, she commanded. She compared the two, her eyes darting back and forth. What is it, senior sister? The disciple asked. Has the ancestor's prophecy ever been wrong? She whispered. Never. Lu Qingyi bit her lip. Looking at the two files, I looked much more like a child of destiny than Yining Shuang did. I was the one with the tragic past, the mysterious growth, and the cliff-jumping survival. Yining Shuang's life had been plain, aside from her luck in surviving. She pulled out 3 bronze coins and tossed them onto the table, trying to divine my future. The coins settled. The result, ordinary. She didn't believe it. She tried again, focusing all her spiritual energy. The result, completely ordinary. She tried a third time. The coins gave the same answer, extraordinarily ordinary. Lu Qingyi rubbed her temples. She was the best at divination in the sect, second only to the ancestor. How could someone be so consistently, aggressively average? It didn't cost her any spiritual price to calculate my fate, which usually meant the person was a nobody. Then, she decided to calculate Yining Shuang's future. The moment the coins landed, she gasped. The results were blinding. Bringer of great fortune. Terminator of the Dark Era. The Eternal Empress, asterisk. The other disciple chuckled. See? The ancestor was right. We should probably find a way to make her break things off with that Ying Huaishu. Lu Qingyi waved him off, her face turning stern. Do not mention this again. I gave him my word. He is a disciple of the Divine Firmament Sword Sect now. I won't tolerate our people insulting or mocking their own. If they aren't meant to be together, they'll figure it out themselves. We shouldn't do anything to interfere, Lu Qingyi said, her voice firm. We aren't here to break up lovers. The disciple quickly bowed his head, his face pale. You're right, senior sister. I misspoke. He didn't dare argue. In the Divine Firmament Sword Sect, Lu Qingyi might have been the youngest core disciple, but her word carried as much weight as the sect leaders. Sometimes, people listened to her even more than the man in charge. She was reliable, brilliant, and had single-handedly steered the sect toward prosperity. Even the ancestors' prophecy claimed she held up half the sky in the Hongmeng world. That kind of praise was terrifying. If someone as powerful as her wanted Yining Shuang, it was because the girl was even more of a monster. But as Lu Qingyi watched the town below, she couldn't shake a feeling. She felt that Ying Huaishu, was different. She couldn't put her finger on why, but her intuition screamed that I wasn't just some ordinary nobody. Enough, she said, turning away. We wait 3 days. Then we depart. The disciples bowed in unison, but Lu Qingyi's gaze drifted back to the window. Suddenly, she froze. Her expression turned blank as she witnessed something completely ridiculous. I didn't know I was being watched. I was too busy staring at my system interface. I had expected the prologue, Phase 2 quest to end the moment I got my disciple token, but the notification never popped up. I guessed I had to actually report to the sect to finish it. That was fine by me. In fact, it was better. Once I reached the sect, the daily tasks would get much harder. I had chosen the highest difficulty setting for this world, and now that this was my reality, I had to be careful. Staying in Peace Town was safe. It gave me time to grind. As a pro gamer, I knew how to optimize. I needed to hoard experience points like a dragon hoards gold. But things were already going off script. In the game, there was a major side quest where you defend Peace Town from a wolf pack. That quest was gone. It was a huge loss. That event wasn't just about wolves. It was a plot device to get the sect to notice Yining Shuang. More importantly, the reward was the Wolf King's soul. That soul was a top-tier item that led to a secret hidden realm, the best early-game gold farming spot. It also eventually became the player's first pet. Experience, gold, and a powerful companion, all gone. If this were still a game, I would have complained about a bug. But since I couldn't pay to win my way out of this, I had to stay in town for a few days and milk every daily quest I could find. I needed at least 10,000 experience points before setting foot in the sect, or I'd be hopelessly behind. Luckily, because I finished the first prologue task, the town was suddenly covered in blue exclamation marks. There were side quests everywhere. I almost cried tears of joy. When I played the game, I used to ignore these NPCs because I was too busy speedrunning the main map. Now, these little tasks felt like seeing old friends. I threw myself into the work. But as I started, I realized how annoying reality could be. In the game, I just clicked skip on the dialogue. Now, I had to actually listen to them drone on. I stood in front of a villager, my eyes glazed over as he rambled about his problems. I wasn't listening to a single word. The moment his mouth stopped moving, I snapped back to attention. "Got it," I said. Then I sprinted away. The villager scratched his head, looking confused. Does he actually know what I asked him to do? Somehow I did. My efficiency was terrifying. But it wasn't enough. Walking was too slow. I fell back into my old gaming habits. I started doing this sprint-jump-dash combo everywhere. Yining Shuang, who had already finished packing her things, watched me from the porch. She sighed and shook her head. The young master is having another episode. I didn't care what I looked like. I was in full optimization mode. If there was a shortcut, I took it. I climbed walls, scaled pillars, and leaped across rooftops. The people of Peace Town watched in stunned silence as I blurred past them. They didn't understand my methods, but they couldn't argue with the results. I was getting things done faster than anyone they had ever seen. When a shipment of goods arrived at the town docks, I didn't hesitate. I ran over and started hauling crates. But I didn't just walk them over. I carried them while bunny hopping at full speed. It just so happened that the goods were for the very tavern where Lu Qingyi was staying. She stood at the window, watching me bounce toward the building like a man possessed. Her face went a little pale. The other disciples saw me too. They all turned to look at Lu Qingyi at the same time. Their eyes were full of judgment. It was as if they were all asking, "Senior sister, is this really the genius you recruited? He looks like he's missing a few brain cells." Lu Qingyi composed herself and forced a smile. "Ying Huaishu is truly extraordinary." The disciples looked skeptical. Lu Qingyi let out a cold snort to regain her dignity. Think about it. His movements might look chaotic, but look at his speed. And look at where he puts the crates. He's tossing them carelessly, yet every single one is landing in a perfectly straight pile. The disciples finally snapped out of their daze. They realized Lu Qingyi was right. My movements didn't look like any known martial arts style, but I was moving twice as fast as a normal person. Plus, the way I stacked those crates was terrifyingly neat. It was so perfect that some of them felt bad, even thinking about moving one. A few disciples actually tried to copy my walk. They started bunny hopping around the dock. To their surprise, it really was faster. But the exhaustion hit them almost instantly. They were panting within a minute, staring at me like I was a freak of nature. How did I have this much stamina? To them, I was a monster. Lu Qingyi watched her fellow disciples hopping around like a group of noisy monkeys and felt a massive headache coming on. It looked ridiculous. They eventually gave up because it was just too ugly. It didn't fit the image of elegant, immortal swordsman. Besides, using spiritual energy to maintain such a weird posture was just plain stupid. Still, they looked at me differently now. I might have had a low-grade spiritual root, but my physical endurance was legendary. They turned back to Lu Qingyi with newfound respect. Her eye for talent was clearly superior. Lu Qingyi felt a surge of pride. She hadn't been wrong about me. Even if my fate seemed ordinary on the surface, there was something undeniably strange about me. She shook her head, deciding not to overthink it. Whether I was a hidden gem or just a weirdo would be settled once we reached the sect. Right then, her small spirit deer returned. It moved like a shadow, unnoticed by anyone else. The creature shrank until it was only the size of a palm and spat out a glowing bead. Lu Qingyi caught it, her eyes widening. It was a high-quality demon soul. This was a rare find. With enough resources, she could craft a physical body for it and turn it into a powerful spirit pet. She originally thought about giving it to Yining Shuang, but then she looked down at me. I was still hauling crates like a madman. She knew the sect would provide everything for a genius like Yining Shuang. But a disciple with a low-grade root like me? I'd be lucky to get a scrap of attention. She decided to show me some favor instead. When will you be finished? Her voice rang directly in my head. I froze. A notification flared in my vision. A flower bloomed out of thin air in front of me, and text appeared. Miracle quest triggered. A purple navigation marker and a guidance line stretched out, pointing straight to the window where Lu Qingyi sat. I looked up and locked eyes with her. She was startled by how quickly I'd spotted her. I didn't waste a second. I dropped the last package and wiped my brow. Asterisk subquest complete. Reward, 500 experience points. Asterisk. I took a quick glance at my status. My name was Huaishu. I hadn't officially entered the path of cultivation yet, but my experience bar was sitting at 5,200. I had a decent hoard of items, spirit stones, healing pills, and chi-gathering medicines. I didn't linger on the menu. I wanted that miracle quest. Those always gave the best rewards. I sprinted into the tavern and headed for the stairs. Two disciples blocked my path, their swords crossed in the air. Step back, junior brother, they commanded. Let him in. Lu Qingyi's voice drifted from the room. The disciples stepped aside, and the door swung open on its own. I bowed to them and hurried inside. Lu Qingyi was sipping tea, watching me with a steady gaze. For a moment, we just stared at each other. The silence grew awkward. She cleared her throat and rubbed her neck slightly. I caught the hint immediately and dropped into a crouch. Senior sister, what can I do for you? Lu Qingyi's face twitched. She had wanted to act like a mysterious, high-level master, but I had jumped straight to the point. I was ruining her vibe. She felt a bit annoyed, so she decided to make the quest harder than originally planned. I noticed a soul-shading grass nearby when we arrived, she said, her voice cool and detached. Go and fetch it for me. Understood, senior sister. I'm on it. I didn't even wait for her to finish. I turned and bolted out the door. Lu Qingyi was stunned. I didn't ask where it was. I didn't ask about the dangers. I was just gone. She instantly regretted it. Was I always this reckless? She had given me a life-saving jade pendant earlier, but she couldn't just run after me without losing face. Follow him, she whispered to a nearby disciple. Protect him in secret. Don't let anything happen to him. As the disciple hurried after me, I was practically vibrating with excitement. This was a miracle quest. In all my years playing the game, I had never triggered a quest like this in Peace Town. This was a hidden Easter egg I had never seen before. Best of all, this quest led to a specific mini-dungeon. Dungeons meant massive experience points. I knew the layout of this area by heart because a low-level spirit weapon spawned here. It wasn't worth much to high-level players, but for a beginner like me, it was a massive power boost. Back in the game, I used to find soul-shading grass all the time and throw it away because I didn't know what it was for. Now I realized it was a key quest item. I grinned as I ran toward the outskirts of town. This world was finally starting to get interesting. I wanted to see what kind of rewards this legendary miracle quest would actually give me. I had never completed it in the game, and the anticipation was eating at me. My pace quickened. Within minutes, I arrived at a desolate, overgrown graveyard on the outskirts of town. Even though this was now a real world, the layout and the hidden mechanisms hadn't changed at all. I moved with practiced ease. I began searching for stones with specific, strange textures and placing them in precise positions around the clearing. My movements were so fluid and confident that the Shunshao disciple following me in the shadows must have been speechless. This dungeon was famous back home. I couldn't even count how many times I had carried new players through this raid. I finished setting up the formation in record time. As the final stone clicked into place, I stared intensely at the center of the array. I was sweating. A part of me was terrified that this real world wouldn't follow the game's logic, that something would go wrong. But my worries were useless. The formation began to hum. Streaks of brilliant light flowed from the stones, snaking across the ground like glowing veins toward the center. The earth began to tremble. Then, a massive stone portal rose slowly from the dirt. My eyes flashed with excitement. I didn't hesitate. I took a single step and vanished into the gateway. The Shenxiao disciple watching from the brush panicked. This guy was too reckless. He sprinted toward the portal, desperate to follow. But the moment he reached it, the gateway flickered and vanished into thin air. He stumbled, grabbing at nothing but empty mountain air. He was stunned. Then, pure terror set in. He was dead. Senior Sister Lu had given him one job. If anything happened to Ying Huaishu, she would skin him alive. He frantically tried to rearrange the stones exactly how I had. But no matter what he did, the array stayed cold and dead. He paced in circles, sweating through his robes, before finally giving up and sending a desperate message to Lu Qingyi. I wasn't thinking about him at all. I had just stepped into the ghostly realm. Looking at the familiar, chilling courtyard shrouded in a cold mist, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was it. The atmosphere, the smell of decay, it was all exactly the same. My laughter drew attention. The servants patrolling the yard stopped and turned in unison. Their eyes glowed with a freezing, murderous light as they locked onto me. I wasn't afraid. This was my domain. I didn't waste words. I unsheathed my longsword and lunged. */ thrust. Parry. *. I tore through them. Even though this wasn't a game anymore, these low-level spirits were slow. Fighting them felt like slaughtering chickens. My blade sang as it cut through their spectral forms, dissolving them into mist. It felt amazing. I was actually gaining experience points. 10 points per kill. In just a few minutes, I had racked up over 100. I fought my way through the outer layers until I reached the main courtyard. Suddenly, my heart skipped a beat. It started pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Wait, I'm not scared, I muttered, confused by my own reaction. Then it hit me. My body had stopped moving on its own. It felt like a cutscene. Was I really being forced into a cinematic sequence in real life? I stood frozen exactly 3 steps into the main yard. Thick, crimson mist began to billow out from the main hall. A woman's high-pitched, piercing laughter echoed through the air, sending shivers down my spine. The scent of a living person. I can smell it. Her voice rasped. How many years has it been? Finally, a living soul has come to play. The mist exploded outward. A woman over 2 meters tall stepped out. She wore a blood-red bridal veil that seemed to be dripping, and her matching red robes trailed behind her bare feet. In her left hand, she held a jagged sword. In her right, she gripped a severed human head by the hair. The head was fresh, its face twisted in eternal agony, blood and tears still leaking from its eyes. "Oh my, what a handsome young man," she said, tilting her head at a grotesque angle. She grinned, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Husband, I'm almost tempted to make him yours." She lifted the severed head as if showing me to it. Suddenly, the invisible weight lifted. I could move again. I shook out my arms, wondering if that cut scene was a lingering effect of the game system or just my body's natural instinct to freeze in the face of such overwhelming malice. It didn't matter. Now that I could move, it was time to kill the boss. I gripped my sword and charged straight at the giant woman. "You dare," she shrieked, swinging her left-hand blade in a massive arc. Clang! I parried her perfectly. Her eyes went dull with shock as the force of the deflection nearly sent her sword flying. Her massive body lurched backward, off balance. I didn't give her a second to breathe. I went into a frenzy, hacking at her legs and torso. The sensation was different from the game. Back then, it was just haptic feedback through a controller. Now, it felt like I was striking solid stone. It was hard, jarring work, but she was taking damage. Black, foul-smelling blood began to leak from the dozens of small wounds I was carving into her skin. You seek death," she screamed, her rage boiling over. She raised the severed head in her hand, and a dark, suffocating energy began to swirl around her.